Hello and welcome. You're watching World at War. My name is Mohammed Saleh. On the 26th of December, which happens to be the birth anniversary of Mao Zedong, the founder of the People's Republic of China, Beijing stunned the world by conducting what is being described as a test flight of two distinct prototypes of the sixth generation fighter aircraft. At this moment, there is no country in the world that has a sixth generation fighter jet. A country's air force is the crux around which modern warfare revolves. This video, shot in the Sichuan province in China, has ruffled the feathers of many military strategists around the world. The aircraft seen in this video is widely speculated to be China's sixth generation fighter jet that had been in development for the last several years. The other plane in the background is the J-20 Dragon, acting as a chase plane during the test. This new stealth sixth generation fighter jet aims to push the boundaries of stealth material technology to make an aircraft completely invisible to radars across multiple angles and across all frequency bands. What stands out about this fighter jet is its unique tailless aerodynamic design, resembling the fan-shaped leaf of the ginkgo tree. Besides the design, the stealth coating that has been used is ultra-lightweight and thin, capable of absorbing high-frequency electromagnetic waves from advanced military radars, while also effectively neutralizing the low-frequency signals emitted by the anti-stealth radars. Dubbed the Chengdu J-36, this new fighter jet has three engines, two located at the bottom of the fuselage and one positioned on top with an intake above the central engine. The jet is also equipped with side and upper air intakes, a dual bogie main undercarriage and split air brakes or flaperons, which indicate its advanced aerodynamic and performance features. At this moment, only 3 nations in the world have operational sixth generation fighter jets: the United States with its F-35 Falcons and the F-22 Raptors, Russia with its Su-57 Felons, and China with its J-20 Mighty Dragons. Turkey's Khan fighter jet, which is currently being developed indigenously, is in the process of testing and is expected to be deployed in the 2030s. Interestingly, South Korea, which has the American-manufactured F-35 fighter jets, is also developing its own fifth-generation fighters called the KF-21, and it plans to operate as many as about 120 of its indigenous fifth-generation fighter jets by 2032. There is no universal definition that is agreed upon for a fifth-generation fighter jet, but typically a fifth-generation fighter must include stealth, low probability of intercept radar, agile airframes, supercruise performance, advanced avionics, and the C3 capabilities of command, control, and communications. In the case of the sixth generation fighter jets, the benchmark is set even higher. Focus on air superiority roles has moved away from close-range dogfights, which is becoming less and less common. Instead, the sixth generation fighter jets are required to have cyber warfare and even space warfare capabilities, with beyond the visual range air-to-air missile capabilities, the flexibility to undertake manned and also unmanned missions, along with the ability to integrate with more numerous fleets of satellite drones and ground sensors in a high-traffic networked environment to deliver data-to-decision capability. The United States too is developing its own sixth-generation fighter aircraft program that aims to replace the Lockheed Martin's F-22 Raptors. The American sixth-generation aircraft will also have long-range stealth design and adaptive cycle engines for fuel efficiency. They'd be able to generate more electrical output than the current propulsion systems to power directed energy weapons. The American sixth-generation fighter jets are expected to be ready for combat by the 2030s. India, that currently operates the Rafale fighter jets, has an invite from Germany and Spain to develop its own sixth-generation fighter jet. The Chinese sixth-generation fighter jet, the J-36, is still in its testing phase. But a new arms race has begun to build the most advanced fighter jet that will realign the balance of power through air superiority in the coming decade. At least 15 people were killed and dozens of others were wounded when a US Army veteran steered a pickup truck into a crowd of New Year's revelers in New Orleans, turning the revelry into a scene filled with horror. Reportedly, the assailant left his vehicle after crashing and then shot at the police. He was killed by their return fire, but not before injuring 2 police officers as well. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has reported that the black flag of the so-called Islamic State group was found inside the pickup truck, along with 2 suspected improvised explosive devices that were discovered nearby. The attack is being investigated as an act of terror by the FBI, in which the attacker acted as a lone wolf. Our next report gets you more details.
The city of New Orleans, nicknamed the Big Easy, is renowned for its nightlife, vibrant live music scene and distinct regional cuisine. The party was in full swing in the early morning hours of New Year's Day in the city's French Quarter, when a US Army veteran hell-bent on carnage turned the youthful revelry into terror at 3:15 a.m. local time. The man, who was later identified as Shamsuddin Jabbar, a 42-year-old Texas resident and US Army veteran, drove a rental truck at high speed into a crowd of revelers spilling out of bustling bars and packed clubs.
It did involve a man driving a pickup truck down Bourbon Street at a very fast pace, and it was very intentional behavior. This man was trying to run over as many people as he possibly could. It was not a DUI situation. This is a more complex and more serious based on the information we have right now.
The carnage continued for 3 blocks before the white Ford F-150 electric pickup crashed and came to a halt near the corner of Bourbon and Conti streets. Jabbar, who had served in the US Army as a human resources specialist and an IT specialist from 2007 to 2015, and then in the Army Reserve until 2020, exited the truck and was killed in an ensuing shootout with police. Jabbar was also deployed to Afghanistan from February 2009 until January 2010.
Is that this man, this perpetrator, he fired on our officers from his vehicle when he crashed his vehicle. 2 of our officers have been shot. They are stable, and we will give you an update on them.
Reportedly, the New Orleans Police Department officers reached the scene of mayhem barely 2 minutes after the attack. In no time, the entire area was cordoned off with crime scene tape and echoed with the sound of sirens blaring from ambulances driving off. Reportedly, an ISIS flag was located in the vehicle, which led the FBI to work on determining the attackers' potential associations and affiliations with terrorist organizations. Responding to reporters, the US President Joe Biden, who was en route to Camp David, expressed anger and frustration. Later at Camp David, Joe Biden, citing the FBI, said the suspect in the deadly New Orleans attack posted videos barely hours before the attack, indicating that he was inspired by ISIS.
The FBI has reported to me the killer was an American citizen, born in Texas. He served in the United States Army on active duty for many years. He also served in the Army Reserve until a few years ago. The FBI also reported to me that mere hours before the attack, he posted videos on social media indicating that it is inspired by ISIS, expressing a desire to kill, The ISIS flag was found in his vehicle, which he rented to conduct this attack.
On the streets of New Orleans, which once resonated with the fabled jazz history and Mardi Gras parties, much of the debate has now shifted to whether more could have been done to prevent the attack and keep people safe. America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, is yet again besieged with a palpable sense of insecurity and vulnerability.
Shortly after the start of the Gaza war in October 2023, Yemen's Iran-backed Houthis started targeting the commercial shipping that traded with Israel or belonged to Israel or its allies in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, in solidarity with the Palestinian people who are under the pump by the Israeli bombardment. More than 45,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza by Israel since October 2023. Describing the Houthis as the last arm of Iran's axis of evil after Hamas and Hezbollah, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has now threatened more attacks against the Iran-aligned group. Last week, a wave of Israeli air bombardment hit Yemen's main airport, killing at least about 3 people. Separate attacks in the country's key infrastructure, such as the port city of Hodeidah, killed another 3 people. In addition to this, Israel's principal ally and backer, the United States of America, has carried out attacks against targets in the Houthi-controlled capital city of Sana'a and also the coastal locations in Yemen on both Monday and Tuesday. On Wednesday, the Houthi group said its air defenses had shot down yet another American-manufactured MQ-9 Reaper drone in the airspace over the oil-rich province of Marib. Our next report gets more details.
On Monday, close to midnight, Tel Aviv echoed with the sound of sirens. Minutes later, the Israeli military notified that a missile launched from Yemen was intercepted by the Israeli Air Force. The shrapnel from the interception fell in the central town of Beit Shemesh, where authorities had cordoned off the area. After the Israeli military announced the missile interception, Mohammed Ali al-Houthi, the head of Houthi Supreme Revolutionary Committee, declared that the Houthis would not end attacks on Israel. On the same day, Israel's ambassador to the United Nations issued what he termed as a final warning to Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi militants to halt missile attacks on Israel, saying they risk the same miserable fate as Hamas, Hezbollah and Syria's Bashar al-Assad if they persisted.
Let me make one thing absolutely clear. We have had enough. Israel will not stand by, waiting for the world to act. We will defend our citizens, no matter how far the threat. For those who remain silent when our schools and playgrounds are attacked, do not call for de-escalation when we respond. Do not equate those who launch missiles to murder with those who protect their people. And also, we will not expect much from the UN, but the calls for restraint will not be accepted. Israel will defend its people. If 2,000 kilometers is not enough to separate our children from the terror, let me assure you, it will not be enough to protect their terror from our strengths. And for conclusion, I'm saying to the leadership of the Houthis, I have a message for you today. Perhaps you have not been paying attention to the lessons of this past year. Let me remind you what had happened to Hamas, to Hezbollah, to Assad, and to all those who sought to destroy us. This is not a threat. It is a promise. You will share the same miserable fate.
The warning did not have much effect, as the very next day, the Houthis claimed to have targeted the Ben Gurion airport near Tel Aviv and a power station south of Jerusalem using a hypersonic ballistic missile and a Zulfikar ballistic missile, respectively.
نفذت القوة الصاروخية في القوات المسلحة اليمنية.
The missile force of the Yemeni armed forces carried out two specific military operations, the first of which targeted Ben Gurion airport belonging to the Israeli enemy in Jaffa area in occupied Palestine, with a hypersonic ballistic missile of the type Palestine II. The other operation targeted the power station south of occupied Jerusalem using Zulfikar ballistic missile. The two missiles successfully hit their targets.
Israel's principal ally, the United States, carried out attacks against targets in the Houthi-controlled capital Sana'a and coastal locations in Yemen on both Monday and Tuesday. On Wednesday, the Houthis claimed that its air defenses shot down a US MQ-9 Reaper drone in the airspace of the oil-rich province of Marib. They also claimed that it was the second US drone the group had shot down in the last 72 hours. In the new year, the mood on the streets of Yemeni capital Sana'a was of defiance and unwavering support of Gaza and the Palestinian people.
Truly, we will not stop supporting Gaza or abandon it. We hope in this new year that God grants us His victory and that He grants victory to those resisting among us in Gaza. We stand with them until death. We approach this with determination and willpower, using all the strength we can muster.
On the New Year's Day, Israeli military vehicles were seen moving within the buffer zone in Golan Heights. Though the move has been described as a limited and temporary measure to ensure the security of Israel's borders, Israeli officials have given no indication of when the troops might be withdrawn. The United Nations Security Council, which has extended a long-running peacekeeping mission in the Golan Heights for 6 months, has expressed concern that military activities in the area could escalate tensions. In the early hours of Friday, at about 4:30 am local time, sirens echoed in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem once again. Yet again, the Israeli military notified the public that a missile launch from Yemen was intercepted by the Israeli Air Force and the sirens were activated in anticipation of falling shrapnel from the interception. On the same day, thousands of protesters, many of whom were waving rifles and chanting slogans in support of Palestinians, rallied in the Sabine Square in the Yemeni capital Sana'a. During the rally, Houthi military spokesperson Yahya Saree took to the stage and announced 2 military operations using a hypersonic ballistic missile Palestine II and a drone carried out by the group against Israel. The Houthis, who consider it their religious and moral duty to respond to Israel's war in the Gaza Strip, have been staunchly defiant in the face of Israeli and US aggression so far. The question is, how long can they keep up this defiance and belligerence?
At least 12 people were killed in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo in overnight raids by the Islamic State-linked allied democratic rebel forces. The overnight attacks targeted 2 places in the same province and left a trail of burning homes in their wake. The Democratic Republic of Congo's restive northeast has been plagued by allied democratic forces since the mid-1990s. Now, despite the Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda launching a joint military operation against the allied democratic forces at the end of 2021, it has failed to put an end to their attacks so far. Our next report gets more details.
Africa's second largest country, the Democratic Republic of Congo, ranks among the 5 poorest nations in the world. Compounding the problem for the impoverished nation is the insurgency in its east, which it has been battling for decades. More than 120 rebel groups are fighting with national armed forces for power, land and valuable mineral resources. Originally from Uganda, the Allied Democratic Forces have killed thousands of civilians in the restive northeast of Democratic Republic of Congo since the mid-1990s. In the year 2019, they pledged allegiance to the Islamic State group. The Islamic State touts them as its Islamic State Central Africa province and has claimed responsibility for some of their attacks. Given their scourge, a joint military operation baptized as Shuja was launched by Uganda and the Democratic Republic of Congo at the end of 2021. The offensive has proved to be unsuccessful so far. Both the armies have managed to push the rebels back into the remote and inaccessible areas, which has resulted in the local civilians bearing the brunt of the rebels' particularly violent methods. In the latest attacks, the ADF rebels killed at least 8 people in the village of Bilendu and 4 people in the village of Mangoya and set houses ablaze in both the places. These latest attacks come on the heels of a series of ADF raids over the Christmas period that killed 21 people in the North Kivu province. Last month, a summit between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda to be hosted by Angola was abruptly cancelled, dashing all hopes for an immediate peace deal for the region torn apart by 30 years of conflict. Angola is the African Union designated mediator in the dispute between the neighboring countries.
O acordo foi negociado a 99%.
The agreement was practically 99% negotiated and an understanding was reached on the key issues, of which there are 3. The first key issue is the disengagement of forces. The second key issue is the neutralization of the FDLR. And the third key issue is the question of the M23 group.
A neutralização dos FDLR.
The one paragraph of the agreement that was to be negotiated at ministerial level and on which the ministers were negotiating until very late yesterday was the subject of the final negotiations. But we did not reach a convergence of views on all aspects.
A total of 7.3 million people have been displaced across the Democratic Republic of Congo due to various conflicts. Women constitute 51% of the displaced population. The Congolese president, Felix Tshisekedi, who has been in power since January 2019, has struggled to bring an end to the cycle of violence despite his promises. With the talks for a peace deal stalled and recent upsurge in attacks by rebels, there seems to be no light at the end of the tunnel for the Congolese president.
And with that's a wrap on this edition of World at War. And if you want to reach out to me with any comments, feedback or suggestions, please feel free to do so on the ID that you're seeing on your screens. I'm your host, Mohammed Saleh, and I'll see you again next week.